Hello, this is David of the Savage Experience, and this year I'm going to MAGFest 10, and here's my first interview from MAGFest 10, Brian Lee, the Game Anthropologist. Brian, how are you doing? Because we're on the eve of MAGFest 10.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so,
we're very close.
So I've got to ask you, because called Game Anthropologist, how did you get started in gaming?
In gaming, well, when I was a kid, I got my first Nintendo when I was 5 years old, and it's kind of been uphill ever since, I guess, or downhill, depending on who you ask. I started with that, and I progressed to the other systems. Usually Super Nintendo's my favorite. It's my biggest collection with that. And I've been gaming ever since, and I'm approaching my 30s, and I'm going to keep gaming even beyond that.
What are some of your favorite video game franchises?
Oh man, that's pretty simple. A lot of the RPGs from the Super Nintendo I love, especially Final Fantasy VI being my favorite. Chrono Trigger, I like Secret of Mana, that's why I have the poster behind me. And others, I like the Metal Gear Solid series, although the fourth one was a little hit or miss with me. And I just basically any kind of game. I'm not really trying to pigeonhole one system or one genre of games. I usually go with a whole bunch, so yeah, that's what I like.
Now, when it comes to you and your family, you come from a big family.
Yes, I do.
Huge. Like many brothers, many sisters. How does coming from a big family impact you as a person, not only as a person, but also as a reviewer?
As a reviewer, per se, you're very observant. You hear different perspectives. I have brothers that are a little older than me, almost 10 years, a couple of them, and I get to hear their views on things from different eras. So their views of gaming kind of go back to Atari. I started with Atari too, but I always say that Nintendo is kind of my first console. And I hear a lot of things. I have a younger sister. She's kind of a gamer, not really big into it. She knows the genres and she knows the lingo for a few things, but mostly I get some feedback from them. They've actually just discovered I make videos, and I'm getting some positive feedback from them. And they've been telling me how I can tweak the show a bit, or how I can maybe enhance the viewership and other things that are not too helpful, but yeah, they're trying. But it helps. It helps with my observation of things, I think, bottom line. Yeah.
And I said, because of Game Anthropologist, and you're concerned about the history of video games, what particularly fascinates you about the history and culture of video games?
Well, I like how it's evolved over the past 25, 30 plus years. I mean, you have adults like myself and even people beyond that are actually playing games, doing things that most considered a few years ago to be very childish, and now it's very into the zeitgeist. So gaming culture's now, I think, evolved beyond the point where it's very acceptable to a lot more people other than just gamers. I mean, I was watching The Big Bang Theory the other day, and they were playing Halo, and it seemed that's like now that's there. Even though they weren't using all the sound effects, I guess they couldn't clear, but it's in primetime television now. That's right there. It's a great representation. Although they're kind of more of a shut-in type. I think gamers are very eclectic. It's not just one type. It's not a shut-in. It's not people that like to play Monster Hunter or anything like that. It's it's a whole group of people, and I think that's what gaming has really become. It's very different. There's no one Cheeto stained ne'er-do-well sitting in a corner just playing games, and that's what MAGFest especially exemplifies.
Now, because we're just talking about gaming culture, what do you feel are like the positives of gaming culture and the negatives?
Well, the positives and the negatives both involve the people, depending on who you encounter. People at MAGFest, for instance, are always very positive. They love being there, and it's always the kind of people you see that are willing to share, and they're willing to trade, or willing to trade knowledge or games or whatever, and they're willing to just sit down and play a game with you. The negatives are obviously, I think, most of the negatives I find seem to be in the online community, especially Xbox Live, where you hear the negativity, and especially little kids speaking, or even adults, grown people, threatening you or even saying bad things to you. I mean, other than that, I think gaming culture, the only negative beyond just the actual gamers is the price. It seems very costly, although games were very costly back then, but especially in a time of recession right now, it seems really the gaming companies are nickel and diming us, and then there's SOPA and PIPA. But other than that, I think there are more positives far outweigh the negatives of gaming.
Yeah, because you remember back in the day when you could buy Goof Troop for $75?
I do remember. Chrono Trigger was very expensive back then. All those other games, too. Super Nintendo games, Nintendo 64 games were all $70, $75. So.
Now, I noticed that looking through your library that you have in particular the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I believe I saw a couple of other books concerning mythology and folklore. Would you say that video game characters such as, for example, Mario and Link, they're the mythology of our times?
I'd say so. I mean, it's just like what Joseph Chamberlain always said. That's how George Lucas came up with Star Wars. It's mythology, stories being told over and over again in different forms. Story of the 300 is told in different forms, that crappy movie from a few years ago, to other Greek mythology. Gaming can now kind of insert itself in using its own types of that mythology in gaming, with the princess or the epic journey, the quest, the MacGuffin, all that kind of thing. So I think that's, gaming is now, that's why I say it's evolved beyond the point where it's now more acceptable and more people can see it as a form of storytelling and even a form of entertainment beyond just a simple, we're just going to play for a few hours and then just, have our kick somewhere else.
And speaking of coming from the idea of like video games maybe reaching a plateau or no, do you see that video games have reached that plateau, or do you think that there are new that there's another evolution out there on the horizon for video games, that there's like some new technology that's going to keep improving games, anything like that?
I think anything by plateau you mean it's peaking. I would say that gaming hasn't really peaked yet. I think gaming, like any new media or media culture, mass media, never really peaks. There's always the next evolution around the horizon. Journalism used to be with the newspaper, the typewriter, then the computer. Now it's bloggers. It's not really in newsstands or newspapers or even corporate-run television. And gaming's the same way. It used to be bloops and bleeps, and then it evolved slowly with more interaction with the controller. Now you are the controller with the Kinect. I mean, I don't really know what the next evolution is or the next whatever the byproduct of that might be, but I mean, it's not peaked. I can definitely tell you that. I think it's, from what I can see and what I've studied, I don't think it's anywhere close to peaking.
So, I want to talk about MAGFest. Now, how many times have you gone to MAGFest?
I've only been there once. I was there last year.
Okay, what were your impressions of it?
Oh, wow. I made a few videos about it, about positives and the negatives, but my general opinion of it was very high. I enjoyed being there. I'm not a convention-going guy. I've only been to 2 my whole life, that being one of them, so 1 even prior to that. And my experience was kind of jaded a little bit because of the travel. Luckily, this MAGFest is very close to me. I live in Philadelphia, so it's a short drive for me. I really enjoyed the people, the interaction. There's so much to do down there, and there's so many things to look at. I thought it would be kind of very... I kept hearing it was 24 hours a day. It's like, how much can you do in 24 hours? I didn't do enough in 24 hours. So I think this time I'm going to do a lot more. I'm going to experience even more, talk to a lot more people. That's kind of my regret. I used a lot of B-roll footage. I want to get more interaction. I might actually do a 24-hour show. We're still deciding on that. I have the missus to consider for that one. We'll find out.
Yeah, because as someone who's going for the first time, it really does sound exciting. But for this particular event, for MAGFest 10, what are you most excited about?
Well, that's easy. That's Nobuo Uematsu and his new band, the Earthbound Papas. Although I hear the Black Mages are going to be there too, or at least maybe it's a tribute band. I didn't get the full schedule yet, but my God, I have to see Nobuo Uematsu. And I'm not big on hero worship. I think Bruce Campbell's the only other guy I'd rather see other than Nobuo Uematsu at this point. And I have a Super Famicom version of Final Fantasy VI hopefully he can sign. That'd be nice. And I have a Black Mages cover. I don't know if he's too keen on signing that, though, considering his past history, but my God, I can't wait. I will knock over a baby stroller to go see Nobuo Uematsu, but don't quote me on that.
Now, final question, and this is in regards to your past MAGFest experience, and that is, what are you going to do to those who imitate Colossus from the X-Men arcade?
Not a violent man, David, not by any means, but I will ask them nicely to please stop. And I have a feeling there's a growing number of people that are going to do the same thing. I don't think any force is necessary. I think sternly worded letters and maybe frowny faces will actually do it for them. I mean, I think most of those people are pretty few and far between. It's kind of like it's kind of like anything else. Like when one person does it, a billion other people do, and that's just the way it is. And it's like a mob mentality, basically. Oh, they're doing it too. I'm just going to do it too. And the only thing I'm worried about is the elevator parts, but this Gaylord National, that's not going to... This Gaylord National is gigantic. I mean, the Hilton that we were at last year was very nice and quite large, but if they do elevator parties there and shut down the elevators, that would be very impressive. That means the turnout for MAGFest is quite large, and that's actually a good thing, I guess, in the end. Yeah,
and to those who don't know what elevator parties are, I believe that's when everybody gets into an elevator and they start jumping up and down, up and down, up and down. So, if anyone's watching this and you're going to MAGFest 10... please don't do that, or for future MAGFests, because this is going to affect everybody. I mean, come on, have your party somewhere else. But thank you very much, Brian. It's like I'm glad to be here with you and with everybody else down there for MAGFest 10. So this is David from the Savage Experience. Hoping to see you all at MAGFest 10.